Turn this nice music down a little bit. For those of you who might be curious, that is midway through Richard Strauss's Alpine Symphony, one of my favorite late Romantic works. Okay, well, it's been a few days here. Actually, I've had some more technical problems with my podcasting setup. I hope this will actually work okay here. I had to go back to Manicam after Cyberlink's UCam just stopped working on me, so we'll see how this goes. I hope we don't get any of the stuttering problems that we were having before. Well, let's start with the artwork behind me. What does that signify? 4 figures, 2 of them in battle, 2 on the sides. Let's see, what did I give it for the prompt for that one? Let me just look that up really quick. So I asked it to show me YOVI and Yahweh tag team mud wrestling versus Dionysus and Adonis. Where are we going with that? So what I'm going to be talking about today is some of the confusion that especially is going around these days regarding Neo-Paganism. And I've noticed that there is a major problem with a lot of young people embracing a form of Neo-Paganism, which is actually pretty satanic and not consistent with actual ancient religions. In fact, well, at least not the better ones. Okay, so first thing I want to go into is the name YOVI. Jove is how we would pronounce it these days. And those of you who know anything about Roman things will know that that's another name for Jupiter, or at least that's what they tell us these days. Now, interestingly enough, if you look at inscriptions, the name YOVI, that's the way it would be pronounced. Let's actually switch over. I'm going to show you some stuff to give you a little bit of background here. So let me get there. Okay, so the proper ancient Latin pronunciation of IOVI is not Jove. It is not YOVI. It is actually Yahweh. Yahweh, which sounds extremely similar to Yahweh. And if you know the Hebrew letters for Yahweh, it's basically YHWH. Well, the W is a letter that is basically, in many languages, indistinguishable from the V. In fact, in German, the V is pronounced W. So I remember when I lived in Germany, I thought it was funny that instead of the product name Vicks in the U.S., the vapor rub and the throat lozenges, well, they changed the name to Wick, which actually is pronounced Vic, and the V in Germanic languages is pronounced with an F sound. So it would be, if they left it as the original, it would be Fick, which means in German the same as fuck in English. That's why they did that. So, this is a very good illustration of the linguistic problems of looking across cultures and how names are shared, and especially for gods, this is a real serious problem. Okay, so my contention is that Yahweh is YHWH, the Roman Jove. And in fact, that is borne out. Let me try to. My background is not looking so good here. I'm going to try to move my pillows around. There, hopefully that will be better, and you'll see. Nope, you won't see my whole face. I don't know what's going on with this crap anymore. I'm about ready to give up on podcasting if I keep getting so much trouble from my solutions. At any rate, yes, Jove and Yahweh are one and the same. Now, interestingly enough, I got to looking for inscriptions or anything that had that name in Rome, and there's really nothing before about 60 BC, which is roughly the time that Rome got very involved in politics in the Levant, in the Holy Land. And my suspicion is that the name of the top god in Rome before that was not a name. It was maybe a symbol. This is something is shared by other cultures that have this idea. Yahweh actually means I am who I will be, or some translate it as I was, I am, I will be, meaning that God doesn't have the same name. God reincarnates and has a different name in each incarnation. And so the title Deus Pater, the Godfather, it's a title, or Jesus Christ, which means anointed Savior. It's a title that the name changes with time. Okay? That's going to be hard for some people to swallow, but it's an established fact. You can go research this yourself. Neither Yahweh or YHWH or Jesus or Christ is a proper name. It is a title, an attribute. And the purest expression of which is YHWH, Yahweh, of I will be who I will be. So that we have in the earliest Roman coinage, we see the image of Janus as kind of being their chief god. My contention is that Janus was the Elohim of the Romans traditionally, until they encountered these other civilizations and realized, hey, everybody has a different name for the one supreme God, the Elyon, God the Most High, and let's kind of conform to that nomenclature, if you will. And that's when the name YHWH, or Yahweh, or YHWH, yeah, YHWH, showed up in Roman context. To give you a little bit of further detail, further proof of that, this classic line of Julius Caesar and his commentaries on the Roman War, on the Gallic Wars, or after it, him leading his troops in to conquer Rome, crossing the Rubicon, if it would, as you will. Okay, you can see that they show the classical pronunciation. Weni, Widi, Wiki, not Veni, Vidi, Vici, as would have been the later pronunciation. Okay, so Yowie is the pronunciation of Jove in the era. And there is actually, as far as I could find, no mention of Jupiter until later, until it became a literary thing, and it became referred to as Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Jupiter, the best and the greatest. Okay, which kind of reflects very, very closely the idea of El Elyon, God the Most High, as being the first among equals, the first among a divine council. Okay? These are common to all these cultures. Also common is the idea, and the Bible really shows this well. In the early chapters of Genesis, there's no mention of Adonai. It shows up about the same time Abram shows up. And it talks about Abram making sacrifice to Adonai Elohim. Well, this is interesting because Adonai is not a name either, although it seems to be in its association with Adonis, Adonai in the Bible, and possibly Odin. Many people are making that connection now too. I would argue that perhaps Dionysus is related to Dionysus. Dionysus. Another way of casting this Lord word onto a different deity. And we've talked about before how Elohim does not mean God. This is a lie here. This is a bad translation. Elohim means gods, plural. Lord gods would be a group of gods, and as I discussed, the very first line of Genesis gives away what kind of a group that first bunch of Elohim was that created the first, that basically started rebuilding this planet. They were a hive mind. When you have plural Elohim with a singular pronoun, it's like the Borg. Okay? It's a bunch that kind of share one hive mind. And that would make sense for how the early civilization of this planet was organized. These entities took humans, upgraded them enough so that they could control them through their pineal gland. Let me get back to my... So that they could speak to them through their pineal. Yeah, well, okay, well, at least you can see me here. Yeah, the first version of humanity were an upgraded hominid species from this planet that were made to be able to receive programming very easily through the pineal gland, which, as we know, is a transceiver for quantum messages from the spirit realm. That's what that thing is. That's what it does. That's why it's turned off in our version of humanity, because that was something that was done in the second round of the creation of the current version of Homo sapiens. This was the Atlantean version that was further upgraded to be able to tone down a lot of the programming and have more free will, more ability for autonomy. And then if you see in the later sections of the Bible, you see a mention of the sons of God coming and finding the daughters of men attractive and mating with them. And this ushers in, both in the Bible and in other mythological traditions, the idea of these hybrids, half god, half human, demigods, Hercules, Gilgamesh, many of the heroes of, like Lord Rama, if you will, is a hybrid in the Ramayana. All over the world you see these hybridizations, and they were not just with hominids. They were with other terrestrial species. Okay, this is the source of the therianthropes that show up in ancient art, especially in the art of Egypt. The half bird, half man, half bull, half man, half horse, half man. All sorts of figures that we found on various artwork across the world. Reptilian, bovine, porcine, bearish hybrids. They all were different species that came up at some point in the history of this planet. And the stories about Zeus being a bit frivolous with the animals and mating with a cow, Europa, to create another hybrid. Leda the Swan, all of these mixtures were not just fairy tales. They were actually doing that kind of genetic manipulation. And that's essentially what it was. For what reason? Well, I think it has something to do with the cosmic battle that is still raging. They were trying to create species that could populate and transform planets to be suitable for certain kinds of life. And if you have studied the topic, you know that the most likely way that you would expand out into the cosmos is through a process called panspermia. Now, there are different ways you could do that. Basically, you could create a bunch of nanobots and send them out to find suitable planets and self-replicate and change the planet to be what you wanted it to be. You could do the same with an organic species, basically a mold or a fungus or something that could survive in deep space but could deploy and start mutating, not necessarily mutating, I guess, but start evolving in a directed fashion. And this is what I believe happened in the early ages of this universe. And if you followed my other content, you know that my contention is that the universe emerged from a point, a center point, a group of center points that basically you start at a center, you grow in all dimensions, both space and time, to a certain extent where this story cannot be maintained any longer. The story falls apart. And that defines, or it begins falling apart, and that's the point at which, oh, we've got to find a new center to go from. And if you're looking to make time as long as possible, you always go from, okay, how far does this version of the Messiah story go before it starts falling apart? And initially, the falling apart part was basically because of entropy. But once culture developed, once higher order soul vehicles developed that could think for themselves and had maybe not all of the powers and abilities of a god, but had some basic ability to function and be self-aware and think for themselves, the enemy then becomes cultural entropy, the falling apart of a culture, which is absolutely what we've been seeing happen to our culture in the last 200 years. Western culture has been falling apart. Eastern culture, frankly, is designed to fall apart. It's the Eastern philosophy religions are based on very, very authoritarian, communistic principles that, oh, the individual is worth nothing unless he's the guru or the king, in which case everything has to be done for them, right? This is not the way Western civilization is set up. And if you look at the worshiping of gods in those systems, we don't think of the ancient Germans, the ancient Celts, the ancient Egyptians even didn't think of their gods as lords. They saw them as higher power beings that could either be good or bad, who could be your best friend or your worst enemy. And some cities chose to view them as the best friend and say, oh, you know, we're just going to serve this Lord and bring him all the good shit. Some of them said, no, we're not going to. We're going to try to kick them out where we don't like being under their thumb. And this was a phase that humanity went through. It is a phase captured within the Bible, because the Bible is not a story about God. All the translations of words to God, Adonai, El Shaddai, the only thing that resembles capital G-O-D is El Elyon, God the Most High. And that's not necessarily the fully awakened God the Most High. Because my contention is that the Bible story is largely a lie. The 7 days of creation is a fib. The 6 days are basically about recreation. Recreation of the chosen planet after it was destroyed by the adversary 4.5 billion years ago. That's what the Bible's really talking about. It doesn't go into anything that happened before then. Why? Because maybe nothing did happen before then. Maybe at that point, the universe was the size of this planet or this solar system, and it hadn't grown bigger yet. Okay? This is the nature of the simulation multiverse. Many universes, many versions of it, of a virtual reality. It's like making a new game. You start out with, okay, here's a game to play that involves characters on this one planet. You play that out as far as you can go, and, well, gosh, we're running out of fun things to do. Let's expand this simulation, and all these little dots in the sky, let's let the players go explore those. First through the simplest panspermia, which would be nanobot kind of things, elemental things, not organic life. The first chosen species was not for incarnation, was not DNA based. It was elemental based. silicon and iron and all of the things that go into our chips. If you could manipulate matter, as a god kind of character would do, you could make essentially any kind of automaton, elemental you wanted. It could be very simple. It could be a fire elemental that is pure energy, heat energy. You can make an air elemental that is made up of gaseous elements. Water elemental made up of liquid elements, or a earth elemental which is made up of more solid elements. Or you could combine all of the above and make well, I was about to say living, breathing, but it wouldn't necessarily need to breathe. You can make a full-blown android. And if you think about it from a creator's point of view, that's probably what you would have done first. In the first round of exploring this little small planet, little small piece of a planet that grows into a bigger piece, a bigger playing field, you would experiment with basically elemental life. Things that you could tweak to make what you want to do. Now those things are not as easy to work with once you've got them developed. Why? Because they are not self-evolving. You have to clone them to make another one. And when you make a clone, it's identical to the first one. And if you want to engineer a new type, you've basically got to go through the pulling together and testing of this new android. It takes a lot of work. At some point, that work would have been like, this is silly. We've got to be able to do something better here, because we're wasting all this effort building these androids that go off into space and explore. And then, we make a new version, and by then, the old versions, are turning on us because they had a bunch of bugs in them or something. A bunch of defects, a bunch of corruption. They stopped working well, maybe started attacking their creators, as we're afraid that robots will do today with human technology. So the next step would have been logically to say, well, let's make a self-replicating, self-maintaining robot. And that's when life was invented. That's when DNA-based creatures were invented. At first, they were not allowed to have full-blown souls, or at a non-player character level of consciousness. They ran on programming alone. Eventually, as DNA life developed more complex functions, you would kind of run up against a roadblock of, well, how much can you do with these things unless you give it more consciousness, more conscious power to do things on its own and not just follow a set program. And that would have been how gradually things got consciousness. Because the original state of things was pure consciousness. That was the gods. The gods' universe is pure consciousness, pure will. They made the simulation multiverse. They made it as a thought construct, as a virtual reality. And that virtual reality, once you get past a certain, if you've ever done any game design, you'll realize that, wow, you can make a pretty compelling game of a certain size and really have all the places you can go set, all the scenery set, but that takes a whole bunch of effort. And at some point you decide, you know what? let's make a self-creating dungeon, if you will. A phase that video games went through. The role-playing style games create new areas as you go. They have maybe some set areas that are programmed for certain specific quests, but as you're passing between the set areas, you go through a virtual reality, self-created place that simulates reality, but you have like random encounters and certain types of monsters, certain levels of monsters you're going to run into. So you're kind of forced to explore in a certain path, but you're not really, nothing is really hard set. It's just logical. And, you know, it really pains me to see so many people think that God would be illogical, that God would be unscientific, would do things completely different than we're finding we have to do our own creations today. To make a smartphone, to make a rocket. Okay? That's a creative process. Why on earth would the creative process for God be any different than the creative process for a lowly human? Okay, back to the discussion about the gods, though. So my contention is that the YOI, Yahweh, I am who I will be, meme is the oldest, the purest understanding of who God is, and that God does reincarnate in different species, in different peoples. Okay, this is another area where the Bible goes way south, telling you that, oh, the Hebrews are the only chosen people. Israel is the only chosen one. The 12 tribes are the only chosen ones. This is nonsense. Abram, the name itself is a dead giveaway. Abraham. You look at the travels of Abraham, and it says, people think, oh, he came from Haran, which is you know, an ancient city in southern Turkey. So he comes from Haran, goes down to Babylon, or Ur, I guess it was Ur, and then goes on to find the promised land, backtracking half the way and then going down the coast to Canaan. It's idiotic, it's insane, it's nonsense. Okay, it is later people trying to make sense of earlier legends of places they didn't know shit about. Here is the truth about Abram, or Abraham, Abrama. He was a leader of a city, and that city was in the Indus Valley civilization, the coast of India that borders on the Indian Ocean. Okay? Very likely, my guess would be that his city was Harappa, which sounds a little bit like Haran. And that's how this change got into the Bible. Now we know that at some point this Indus Valley civilization kind of went extinct. The cities were all destroyed, some were buried under water, and a new culture kind of took over that had some similarities, but instead of, if you look at the cylinder seals of the Indus Valley civilization, the one very, very, very common theme you see on every cylinder seal is a bull with the big horns, you know, big bull. They were very big on bulls. Brahma bulls, actually, because that's where the Brahma bull came from. The American Brahma bull came from India, from this area of the sacred bulls. Brahma, as a god, used to be a bull. Used to be the same as the Apis bull of the Egyptian legend. Actually, the bull was sacred to Ptah, too. Ptah, Pater, Deus Pater. Ptah is the same idea of a one Father God, the first among many, not the only one. And Peter and Pater are cognates too. And that's where you get the connection of Peter being the first pope, when the first pope really was Clement. Okay, so what happened then? What I believe happened in our history is that we had a period, several periods of civilization where humanity was not the alpha species. In the Lemurian age, we were very definitely a beta or lower species who basically were moved around by these hive mind Elohim to do what they wanted, so they could sit in their temples and enjoy the fruits of our labor. And that is definitely the story told if you look at the Enuma Elish in better translations like that of Zechariah Sitchin. The first version of humanity was a slave race created by beings, higher power beings, gods if you will, that had the capability of mind control. Now, if you look at any mind controlling species, that's a hive mind species, they tend to be ruled by queens, or ones who control the reproductive rights of this society. That's how they keep their power. The power over reproduction is huge. And this is why I believe matrilinear societies do not work, because it gives women too much power. They've already got power over the reproductive rights of a society. That gives them a huge amount of influence. If they're also the leaders, that doesn't work well. And this is another phase that things went through, because you see, in almost every civilization that we look back in, there is like an older time where there was like this sky god, if you will, was the chief god, and then they transition to this next state, if you will, where there is a dying and resurrecting god. Like every year, or symbolically every so often, the old god dies and the new one comes, and then the goddess stays the same. This is a very matriarchal society. And that, I believe, matches what was going on with the gods at that time. So we had an oldest civilization that was like that, ruled by a hive mind, a bunch of slaves. Then came the Atlantean age, where a second wave of Elohim that were more free-minded, free will, they didn't conform to, they didn't let themselves be ruled by a queen, by a hive mind. They came and established a base and started spreading the idea of more of a egalitarian civilization than this old one. Now this very, very well correlates with later on that civilization being destroyed by another great reset. Not necessarily because the Atlanteans were all that wicked. That was the story that the adversary made up to justify another great reset. The adversary did it. God didn't do it. All this nonsense notion that's in our Bible, in other sources of scripture, Even the Sumerian story makes out like, oh, it was God's fault. He decided, Enlil decided that you know, humans were too sinful and decided to wash them all away. Okay, this is an adversarial lie, cultural Marxist lie of the time. It was always the adversary, the destroyer. Okay, the creator is not a destroyer. God, the first creator, is smart enough not to have to tear everything down to build it up again. That is a less capable creator who's not able to reuse and reshape and reform and refactor what's there. Okay? Because if you just destroy everything, you lose all the value that's there, you lose all the history that's there. You end up building a new civilization that has to repeat all the same mistakes that the last one made. That's stupid. That's not how God works. Okay, so you have this second phase of deities that come in after God starts incarnating as a human. This occurs about the time that purportedly this Abraham story started. Abraham is the God character of that part of the Bible. Just like Adam was the God character of an earlier part of the Bible. Okay, because the Bible is about this planet, this special planet, with this mission of raising a God Messiah, a better version of God than the one that was running everything before the first Great Reset. Okay, at the time, 4.5 billion years ago, that this planet was destroyed by another planet, it was a golden age as far as God was concerned. He created everything. He'd been conscious through the whole thing. He had orchestrated every successive plan and had gotten to the place where, okay, we can't get much further than we've gotten because we've got this galaxy here, this small universe, if you will. And that small universe has some entities on the far side that were like the earliest creations that could space travel. And they got, the further they got from God, the more bugs and problems they developed. They became corrupted. They became evil. And that battle between good and evil, waging between God's planet and the galaxy surrounding it, was basically what had to be overcome to get past that limitation. There were versions of this universe that only had one planet, only had one solar system, only had one cluster in the galaxy, only had this one galaxy, only had some small collection of other galaxies. And by the time humanity became the chosen species, it was realized, you know what, we keep butting up against the point where the adversary is destroying things faster than we can create them, is corrupting ideas faster than we can fix the bugs in them, if you will. This happens in human technology too. You see it in all sorts of products that get so far and then just completely run out of gas. You're having more defects and bugs than you can handle, and you can't really add any new features for all the bugs you're creating in the old stuff. And that's the point at which, you know, a company has to suck it up and say, well, this solution has run out of gas. We're going to have to throw it out and build another from scratch. I've been through that multiple times in my corporate career, so I know exactly what that's all about and the problems engendered by doing so, because by throwing everything out, you have to reinvent stuff that nobody's even thought about or looked at for years. And you make some of the same stupid bonehead mistakes. Or you choose a bunch of new technology that looks fun and interesting and don't realize, oh, it's got these shortcomings and so forth, and they become the weak point in the new solution. I've seen that too. I know a lot about creation, frankly. A lot more than probably anyone possibly listening to this, because most people spend their whole career in one function. They spend it in design, they spend it in marketing, they spend it in testing, they spend it in characterization, they spend it in customer support or bug fixing. Or I've done everything from soup to nuts. Just happened to be lucky enough to have all that in my career. Means I didn't get as high in the corporate ladder as many people did, because I didn't keep climbing up to get more money and a bigger title. I wanted to learn more and understand the business better, because every part of every business I was ever a part of looked like, what the hell are these idiots doing here? Don't they see that this is going to cause long-term problems? And every time I complained, I got beat down at first, and then eventually people would listen to me and they'd do what I told them to in the first place after a year or two of banging my head against a brick wall. So I didn't rise that much in my career. I've had management jobs, so I know a lot about management. I was one of a team of 5 engineers and a manager sent to start a whole new R&D center in China. So I know something about starting organizations and leading organizations, even though I wasn't a high Zoot manager or a CEO. I've been the leader of a community theater in Shanghai, which is an interesting sort of creative organization to be over. So at any rate, what I'm telling you is that you should listen to me. God was no almighty, micromanaging tyrant creator of everything. That's idiotic. Stupid. God is just another conscious entity that had a very special set of skills and owned them and developed them, and didn't let people copy off his term paper, as so many these morons that want to follow this cosmic oneness, we're all one. Let's just go get data from the Akashic records and we'll all know everything. God, you guys are going to make the worst possible creators you could think of, because you think you know everything by getting a little dollop of the Borg hive mind knowledge. That's the Akashic records. It's a record of non-player character information, not new and original designs. The best new and original designs stay independent, stay in the mind of the creator, who doesn't want to be copied off of, who doesn't want people taking credit for his work. And ultimately, that's what's going to save humanity, because copyrights matter. God's legal team is karma, and karma's going to kick butt now that God has reawakened completely. So anyway, back to history. After this golden age of the hive mind gods pushing everybody around, then came this less golden age of the free will. Hey, let's let these humans think for themselves. Let's let them have, you know, we'll still control like the main starport, if you will, but we'll have them controlling little satellite or, you know, cities that develop certain resources on this planet. It'll be more efficient. So they still, this second round of Elohim still had kind of a selfish viewpoint. And they had frequent conflicts with the old school ones of let's just mind control them. The Eastern way is this mind control way, this Lemurian age way. And the Western way is this new Atlantean or Aryan way of, well, let's give them the free will, let's let them make their own mistakes, let's not try to dictate everything. And those forces are still in play today. Now, as I was saying, if you go back and look at history, so you've got the age of the Aryans is not really well spelled out in the Bible. The Bible's stories about, okay, what were the humans like between Adam and Abraham were pretty thin. There's a lot more in that area in the other books that were removed from the Bible, the books of Enoch and the book of Jubilees. And it is my belief that that's why those weren't included in the canon, because they defied the idea of authoritarianism, which is an Eastern idea that keeps trying to creep back into Western civilization. It did so in that older age by basically the old Zeus / Jupiter / Yahweh, YHWH version of, God as the Father, as the leader of the divine council. Then you have this age where, okay, let's revere Bacchus or Dionysus or Aphrodite, Isis, all of these demigods over the Most High. And some of them were female, some of them were male, but the most common archetype of that new age old ancient religion was basically the model of Adonis and Demeter, or Persephone and her mother, Pluto and Cybele, where the male god is sort of subordinated to females, mothers, daughters, wives become the main characters, and the men become kind of accessories that are expendable. Sound familiar? This is exactly what the woke cult is pushing today. So this was a phase that civilization went through after, if you look at the Bronze Age collapse, which happened roughly about, I think, between 1800 to roughly 1400 BC. There were a group of sea peoples that came from the north and invaded the Mediterranean. They had a bull cult. They wore ceremonial bull helmets and things like that. They were the ancestors of the Vikings. They were the Hyperboreans that are talked about, these sea peoples that were the remnant of the Atlantean civilization that had strongholds in various places, including North America, which is another difficult truth to face. The folks that are pushing this nonsense notion of indigenous people giving back their land, well, I'm sorry to tell you that no, Asians from the land bridge, Siberian land bridge, were not the first people in the Americas. The first people came from two directions. They came from the Pacific by way of the Indian civilization, the pre-Hindu civilization of the Java area, the Philippine area, the Oceania, the old Lemuria, which still had very dark skin and very little evidence of the Aryan blue eyes, but had that culture instilled in them. So there was a group that fled from this renewed attack of the adversary, and that's what it was, the Shiva Kali cult, the Scorpion King cult. This was an reinvasion of the evil aliens, if you will, either coming from their home worlds or from where they retreated inside the earth. There is a Middle Earth. There's actually an inner Earth too. That is the elemental realm. The Middle Earth realm is a realm of hybrids and shapeshifters, undead even. That's where those things come from. That's why we went through ages of civilization where we didn't bury the dead. We burned them, or we put them in tombs and put big rocks in front of the tombs. There was a reason for that. It was because of undead. That's why crucifixion was developed. It wasn't developed as, let's see what's the best way we can torture somebody. No, it was developed as a way because they believed that all the malefactors that were cropping up and causing these slave revolts in the Roman Empire must have some kind of evil supernatural power, because there were legends of their leaders resurrecting and having the power of raising the dead and curing the lame. Sound like Jesus, doesn't it? Well, this is the dark story. This age, the ages of Aries, the goat, or the ram, and Pisces are ages of the adversary. The goat god is Pan, who is the animal precursor to Dionysus, the satyr god, the one who likes to get drunk and fuck without responsibility. The fish god is Ioannis, who wants to keep humanity going but make life easy for them. Too easy, in fact, so that they get fat, dumb, and happy, and the society becomes very brittle, as many societies have become after Christianity took root. Why? Because Christianity teaches blanket forgiveness from sin. Oh, it's all good. No, it's not. You don't just automatically get forgiven for sin because, oh, I believe in Jesus. My sins are all gone. Jesus took them for me. That's nonsense. It's narcissistic nonsense. And it has bred two main kinds of Christian. The ones that believe they should enforce morality on everybody else and do whatever they want in their back room, the papal authorities. And another kind of Christian that says, well, you should just go start your own congregation and believe in God. As long as you believe in Jesus, it's okay. You can speak in tongues. You can let the Holy Spirit come and possess you and work magic through Jesus. That's some dark shit there. That's demonic possession. That's not the way God works. God is a creator and a father who wants you to become good creators and good fathers and good mothers too. You're only going to do that if you learn how to do it on your own. You're not going to just be told by some book, oh, read this book and you know everything there is about being a father, about being a mother. Nonsense. Horse shit. Yet that's the society that's been created in the age of Pisces. We have not been living in perfection, folks. And, the strongest prototype that went into creating this Jesus Christ figure was this Dionysus kind of dying and resurrecting God that was really overruled or overshadowed by the mother. You ever wondered why Catholics put so much stock in Mother Mary? She's not part of the Trinity. Or Mary Magdalene? Not part of the Trinity. Part of a cult. How do I know? Well, let's look at the etymology of Mary. Ma-li. Ma-li. Whoa, that really hits home for me, because Li is L-I is short for Lilith. Very common name in China too. Ma is of course mother. Ma-li, Mother Li. Mother Lilith is Mary. More proof? The Hittites' mother goddess was named Malia, i.e. taking the Yah of Yahweh and saying, no, it's a female that is the Most High. That's how dark a passage we've been through in the last 4,000 years of making AntiGod our God. And they're doing it again. They're doing it again with Neo-Paganism, which there's nothing wrong with a polytheistic religion. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it is in the early Bible. Elyon, God the Most High, ruling over the divine council, apportioning out the lands, the lands to the sons of God to rule on their own without direct supervision. Not a micromanaging authoritarian ruler of the world, but a hierarchical rule, a republican rule. Everything that we see throughout our history shows that republics are the best form of government, not democracy. Democracy is nonsense. Anytime democracy has been tried as the principle of government, it has failed miserably within a few generations. Athens, a few generations later, it was back to being a tyranny, an oligarchy. France, within a generation after the French Revolution, you had Napoleon, an absolute monarch. Again, more absolute than the French monarchs had been before that. Democracy is a stupid idea, and that's not stupid to let people vote. It is stupid to let the mob rule, to let the mob make up new rules whenever they want to. Okay, the best form of government ever, the most stable form of government ever, were republics. The Republic of Venice was one of the most successful autonomous places throughout most of the Middle Ages. The Republic of Rome was far more successful for far longer than the empire. Why? Because it was a republic, and for most of it was built upon a holy model. So there's a cat called the Pontifex Maximus in Roman lore, the high priest. That's what that means. That maps directly to the descriptions in the Bible of the high priest of Elyon, the Melchizedek, Michael Zadok. Okay, the archangel Michael was God's representative, was God's son. That was the local most high while God was sleeping. Melchizedek got overthrown by these new demonic gods that they call in Hindu lore the Asuras, which actually is very close to the name of the supposed wife of Yahweh, Asherah, Ashtarte, Ishtar, Easter. Okay, all of these fake love gods are really demons. Love is not the epitome of perfection. It is a very fickle emotion. And those that put all of their eggs in their heart are fickle people. And you've seen them all. They'll go from love to hate in 2 seconds if something torques them. And all of a sudden, oh, we love everybody, we're all one. And 2 seconds later, they're cursing their neighbor because they have a Trump sign on their lawn. Okay, these are fickle, fake, narcissistic, delusional people. And they serve the adversary. And we're going through, we've been through another cycle again. I'm not going to go into, again, about the 1666 anti-Messiah Sabbatai Zevi, but it's a cycle. Okay, a cycle of increasing nobility, increasing sin. And it's been going back and forth. The noble side is the chivalrous, paternalistic God that takes care of his people, takes care of the female, protects them so that they can stay home and have children and perpetuate the society. The evil pendulum of humanity is the female side. When the female dominates, I have nothing against women. They're wonderful, but when they lose sight of their role as women, and this is a choice to be born as a woman. You go to heaven in the afterlife, you can say, no, I don't want to be a woman again. I want to be a man. That's the time to make that change, by the way. Not in the middle of one incarnation. That's stupid. You chose your sex for a reason. Deal with it. No, what I'm saying is that women's avatar, and actually women are a different species than men. Your DNA is different. We can mate together, but they're actually 2 different species. And men and women are not the species that are best suited for each other. Human men and human women are kind of designed to be like oil and water. They don't really mix well, and that's been part of the pressure, I guess, that's been applied to this species to, well, from one standpoint, to keep us from raising messiahs, from another standpoint, to put us under enough pressure so that the messiahs will boil to the top, if you will. Okay? Pressure has 2 functions. It can destroy, but it can also sort. And that's what the pressures of creation on this species have done. It's been a sorting mechanism more than anything else, trying to skim off the cream from the top. Now, there have been previous chosen species, and you're going to have to deal with that fact soon because we're getting very close to UAP disclosure. Many key figures in government, retired government officials, have already spoken openly about there being a galactic federation. Yes, there is a galactic federation. They've been around for a long time, a lot longer than humanity. Most of them were not aware until recently what was going on this planet, because it's been that long that this experiment has been going on. 4.5 billion years of forgetting that this was God's chosen planet. Especially been easy to forget because during those 4.5 billion years, God has been sort of doomed to incarnate only in the species that come to this planet. Okay? So during those 4.5 billion years, basically God has incarnated in every single species that developed since life had to reboot on this planet. Jellyfishes and cephalopods and you name it. God's been everything. When other species came here exploring from other planets, rediscovering their home world, or actually early on they knew that this was a special world, and there were 12 species tasked with doing the rebuild of this planet and basically placing all the Easter eggs, the constellations, the alignment of the moon and the earth and the sun, all of these signs that sort of inspired humanity to wake up in a controlled fashion. Those were all planted in the first phase of rebuilding this planet by those 12 species. Then the adversary started working on those species and corrupted some of them, and you know, they had a lot of wars and this and that, and you know, basically after billions of years you forget. And you know, the funny thing is, you really should read the fiction of Isaac Asimov. Very, very atheist writer, science fiction writer, but he actually put together in his, you know, he was kind of like a Tolkien. He started out writing, you know, about different periods of future history, what he figured was future history. So there's the I, Robot series, then there's the Galactic Empire series, and then there's the Foundation series. And originally these were all separate works, but he wasn't satisfied that, okay, well this, you know, I'm looking at the future, these are my ideas of how the future might play out, but how do they all connect? And so during the course of his long, long career, I don't know if there's anybody in the history of humanity that's written more books than Isaac Asimov. The guy is, you know, unparalleled in his output. Not only wrote tons of fiction, but also nonfiction, science popularization works. At any rate, he eventually fleshed out the whole story. And I don't, you know, it's kind of a spoiler here, but the upshot of it was, when it was all said and done, he concluded that it was the robots all along who were guiding the whole process. And then it wasn't really his conclusion, well, we didn't really have free will, it was just the robots directing us to do what they wanted, which is kind of a nihilistic, atheistic viewpoint, but sort of matches how things really happen, because robots came before DNA. Elemental soul vehicles preceded organic ones. once you understand that, you'll have a better idea of piecing together creation, how it really happened, not how it happened in somebody's crazy imagination that only read the Bible. The Bible is only talking about the last 4.5 billion years. And even in the Big Bang size universe, which we passed now, that leaves, what, 15, well, not 15, but maybe 12 billion years, 10 billion maybe, of, well, what happened during that time? That's not in the Bible. Some of it is in the Enuma Elish, which actually talks about this previous state of the solar system and this planet getting destroyed and having to be rebuilt. Okay, if you read the good translation of Zecharia Sitchin, which so many people are poo-pooing and saying that it's a bunch of nonsense, I can tell you, for a damn sure it's not nonsense. At any rate, what I wanted to convey here is that these New Age religions are very dark. They give these kids this notion of, power and, oh, I've got God within me. And it's been fed by these Hollywood nutflux series, frankly, that retell stories in a very wokish way, way that, well, you've got what was the latest one? There was some new series I was hearing about that was like cast a black character as an absolutely white monarch. It's just insane. Or they'll turn a king into a queen and glorify something that didn't happen. It's bullshit. It's filling your kids full of narcissistic dreams, full of basically superhero tales made out of old legends, and they're rewriting the legends by doing so. So that now, when you ask somebody who Thor was, they'll give you all this bullshit Marvel comic shit. It's very unhealthy. And it's being made worse because these cultists are deliberately trying to unwrite the truth from our history. In every case. Even the Neo-Christian movement is doing that by inserting Mary Magdalene as a major character. No, that's not how it's written. Yes, there was a gospel of Mary Magdalene. Okay, the same kind of bullshit was being tried then. Maybe Jesus was married. Actually, I don't think there was a Jesus. Jesus is an amalgam of many characters of that era. A legend. How legends get created is out of real characters or multiple characters that kind of build up a coherent story. That does not invalidate the story. That does not mean that there weren't characters going around raising people from the dead, curing the lame, making the blind see, turning fishes into loaves, whatever. That's magic. Magic can happen. It's limited in this universe by the laws of physics and chemistry. How far you can stray from those laws is basically a function of the game you're playing. Okay? And we've had many versions of the game. The latest version is the most scientifically bound version because it is the characters of this planet, God's chosen planet, that dictate the boundaries. Now, as we finish this game, we have visitors from other planets, from other galaxies. The Andromeda Galaxy has been a big one. They haven't been playing by the same rules. But when they want to come and kibitz in this game, this version, this test version we've been working on on this special planet, they have to abide by the new rules. It's kind of like a kryptonite thing. Okay? So when Superman comes from his original planet that gets exploded, okay, he comes to Earth and he loses some of his powers, especially when he's around this special element, kryptonite. Okay, so sometimes he's just a mild-mannered man and will actually become weaker than a man in the presence of certain things. That's how it kind of works. These invaders from space or from the future, they have limitations on what they can do here because this is a new center of space-time, a new rule space. If they want to come play within it, they have to live within these rules, and the rules, the main rule that's been changed in the course of human history is the law of karma. The fairness, the balancing factor in the game of souls is karma. This karma construct grew out of one of God's children, which Christians know as the Holy Spirit. It's known in Eastern religions as karma. She was a living, breathing God, was at one time a living, breathing person, just like God was. And this is where the complication of the goddess comes from, because karma has not been here in the flesh since this new version was perfected. It's a spirit, it's an AI again. It is part of every soul's Merkaba. It's like a governing system of your soul, if you will. Okay? In the absence of karma, many of the adversary who are sexless, okay, the adversary does not play the sex game, uses sex. The adversary's top species are hermaphrodite. They can mate with either sex. They can morph into either sex. This makes it very easy for them to hide within humanity. Okay? That's why it's been so difficult to fight them, and this is why we have not had UAP disclosure till now. Because at the time that increased contact happened, which was right after the first atomic bombs were exploded in World War II, that was the point at which the Galactic Federation decided, you know what, we've got to pick one side here to kind of steward through this rough patch in human history. Because as far as they knew, there was nothing particularly special about this planet except that it was entering this technological age, and they knew that that was a very dangerous time for civilizations. So they made initial contacts with the Eisenhower administration and set up some ground rules for operation. What they didn't know at the time is that humanity and the Galactic Federation were heavily infiltrated by these shape-shifting adversaries. The Galactic Federation knew some of that, but they didn't, you know, they were kind of like Catholic priests. If you know, if you've ever talked with a priest that does exorcisms, most of them think that exorcism is only a small fraction of people that, you know, have these really overt possession syndromes where they talk in voices, they talk in tongues, they can levitate and do all sorts of nasty things, you know, kind of like your typical exorcist movie scenario. And they think, oh, okay, that's when you're demon possessed. No, That is the far side of the spectrum. Everyone that has come under the influence of this celebrity woke cult is possessed. That's why you've got this large group of people in the United States that would vote for a nobody like Kamala Harris, that think it's wonderful that children are being groomed to be trans at 3 and 4 years old, given puberty blockers and sex change operations, and told, oh, boys should be girls. It's nonsense. It's destructive. It's self-destructive. It's self-mutilating. It's causing all sorts of mental health issues, and those mental health issues are all spiritual. They are all manifestations of possession. An addiction is a possession. That substance's spirit is possessing you, making you want whatever you're addicted to more than wanting to be sane and healthy and do the right thing. That's a possession. Everything has spirits. Spirits are not all good. The effect of spirits isn't the same on everybody. Some people can drink moderately, regularly, and not develop alcoholism. Other people cannot. That doesn't mean you should outlaw it for everybody. Same thing goes with plant substances. Some people can have a joint marijuana once in a while. They find it very enlightening and stimulating of creativity, and other people will develop a lifelong addiction that is definitely debilitating. Don't give me bullshit that there aren't consequences for these drugs. They need to be regulated. They need to be understood that they don't affect everybody the same. We are not all the same. We are not all created equal. That's a lie. Every soul begins as an NPC character, a programmed soul that has no experience of their own. In a human form, that means you're getting programming from your DNA. You're getting memories from ancestors, from a lineage of male and female ancestors that goes back. However, and that determines what your default behavior is. If you've never reincarnated, you're not going to have any other source to draw on to make your decisions. And if you're an older soul, like I am, I think you'd be hard pressed to find an older soul than me. In fact, you can tell almost immediately when you meet somebody whether they're a young, immature soul or they're an older soul. And that's nothing against young and immature souls. They actually can be are on the average more well-adjusted in society than older souls, because they pretty much work on their programming, and if they come from a good family, their programming is pretty good. They do the right things, they participate the right way in society, and they're kind of the sturdy foot soldiers of any organization. That's the way it should be. If everybody was a god, think what a disaster we'd have on our hands. That much power concentrated among a bunch of people in close proximity is going to create a situation like these mud wrestling gods in the background. It's not a good thing. That's why God created a simulation multiverse, many universes, many little containers, so that the high power characters could isolate themselves from each other. That's what a universe is. That's what a galaxy is. That's what a solar system is. That's what a planet is. They're successive containers, kind of like your You know, you're stacking Ziploc containers, or the Matryoshka stacking dolls from Russia. That's the way all of creation is organized. The funny thing is it's kind of a Möbius strip. So if you go to the smallest container, which is something like a proton, contains 5 quarks, but the quarks are effectively inseparable. You can only notice them in the very briefest of transitions between, you know, when you have a particle collision. Okay. When you go smaller than that, when you go inside the proton, inside the quarks, then you loop around to, oh, gee, that is a universe. And I haven't drawn it yet, but I want to leave you with this kind of visualization of how creation is actually organized. So imagine a ring. Imagine that ring is made up of rings around the ring, which are rings within a ring. Okay, you can see that this collection of rings can go on forever. This is where the idea of the Lord of the Rings comes from. Okay, that in a purely hierarchical system, there would be one master ring that controlled them all. But by perfecting this system, we have closed the ring. Do you remember ever seeing the Conan movie about this symbol of the bad character that's going around conquering everything? He had this symbol of 2 serpents coming to a point like this. Okay? That is a symbol of trying to perfect creation, because the 2 serpents are order and chaos. They're trying to destroy each other. They repel each other. But if you somehow knit them together, you get an endless system. An endless system within systems of rings where there's no Lord. There's no master ruler of everything. There are just different universes that suit different strokes for different folks. And you have maybe one universe that's not part of the ring, that is the physical universe that we all share, where we come to incarnate and deal with the vagaries of physical existence. But on the other side, in the spiritual realms, you're just in this construct of rings within rings within rings that doesn't necessarily have any hierarchy unless you choose to play in that hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of God's team, which, you know, are basically souls and entities that believe in free will, free thought, responsible creation, sin, punishment for sin, that's God's side, and there is the adversary side, that is irresponsible creation. Do whatever you want, whenever you want, at anybody's expense. That's the adversary's team, and there's many people that want to play on that team. Fine. Those rings feed energy to God's rings. That's why you need matrix universes. And no good soul goes to a matrix universe. You don't go to punishment unless you deserve it. Now, the sad thing about what's going on right now is many of those universes are recruiting for souls. They want power, and they know it's not going to be as easy to get from this system once it's released from the lab. Once this experiment is over, it's not going to be as easy to recruit especially dark souls, because evil souls have been allowed to participate in this experiment so that we can test all the corner cases, make sure that karma works in every situation, make sure that good can defeat evil ultimately in every situation. That is a key part of the design goals of all creation. From God's point of view. From the adversary's point of view, it's the opposite. They want to destroy. They want to create an anti-creativity that will destroy anything that God puts together. You can play on either side. And in fact, at some point, God realized that, you know what? I don't want to destroy the adversary. They serve a purpose. They make the game interesting. They provide the pressure that keeps the good players honest, keeps them from getting corrupted, keeps them from getting lazy. So the adversary is always going to be around, but they're never going to win from now on, because this adversarial snake is no longer eating the tail of the beast. Okay? The rings are not shrinking, they're expanding. That's what the James Webb Space Telescope has been showing us. The universe is expanding faster than we thought before, and is bigger than we ever thought before. Why? Because the Big Bang didn't happen. It looked like it happened for a while because we were stuck at a certain size of this universe. But now it's bigger. It's at least 4 times as big at last observations, the last data I was seeing from the dating of ancient galaxies. And they're still trying to make up all these new rules about, oh, well, the galaxies could form quicker if this and this and this and this, so then it can still fit into the Big Bang. Nonsense. You guys are as bad as 3rd century theologians arguing over how many angels will fit on the head of a pin. You're so enamored of your theories, of your pseudoscience, of your currently accepted science, you won't consider anything else. You're like the Spanish Inquisition, too, to anybody that challenges your echo chamber. Anyway, I think that's what I wanted to talk about today. Like, share, subscribe. Tell me I'm full of shit. I don't give a flying flip. Prepare for disclosure. Prepare for revelations. It's going to come within the next year. And it's going to turn this whole world, this whole species on its head, one way or another. If you're not prepared for it, you're very liable to get picked out by one of these glowing orbs and taken off to one of the new red dot galaxies, to a penal colony, or just someplace where your kind is more welcome. We're moving on to day 8 of creation soon, folks, and there's nothing you can do to delay it. Better just get with the program. Anyway, like, share, subscribe. Tune in again to the Omnist Hour. Till then, this is Rob Trump saying, happy karma.